Hello and welcome to the Talk with Tariro. On the program today, we are discussing an issue which pertains to us as parents as well as our children. That's the issue of parent-to-child communication. We know when we're looking at issues of sexual and reproductive health, rights, sexual and reproductive health issues on their own, parents often struggle in terms of what issues do we raise, because in our own African setting, we say it is taboo to have such discussions with our children. But should it be taboo? To help us unpack that issue, I have Rumbi Mudzi. Rumbi is the clinic supervisor, sexual and reproductive health nurse counselor with the Adult Rape Clinic. Rumbi, welcome to the talk.
Thank you for having me, Chad. It's good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you again on the program. We want to find out, we know broadly we are looking at the issue of parent-to-child communication. What I want to find out from you first is when young people want to know about issues of intimacy, having boyfriends, those kinds of issues, where do they turn to?
So, of late, social media is the answer to a lot of things. Yes. So there's Google, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, but also they're with their friends. And, so this is where they know about these things. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And is that healthy?
No, not really. Mm-hmm. At least I don't think so. There's some good things there, on these platforms, but I don't think that's the answer, actually. I think we need to bring in the parents there, which is the topic really at discussion here. Parents need to be able to play a part in these conversations. I know it's tough, but it's a discussion parents need to have with their children.
What role should parents play when it comes to issues of sex and sexuality, sexual and reproductive health rights?
I think ideally, and please note, ideally, parents should be the go-to. The first person a child should hear about sex from should be their parents, because I think parents are the people who have the child's best interests at heart. So what better person than a parent to then be the one to unpack this? Because they know, and they've got, they really want the best at the end of the day. So parents should be the first port of call. Yes. But unfortunately, it's not like that.
Why is it not like that?
So I've been told it's tough. It is, as a parent myself, it's really tough. And I know over the years, going back, time immemorial, it's always been the aunt, the uncle, tete, but look, we're in COVID, we're stuck in our homes and there's no traveling. So a lot of children have actually grown up now with just the parents. So this is why all this is coming back to the parents to be that person who needs to talk to their children, because there's no one else who's going to do. Schools are even closed, people are learning from home. So if not the parents, they'll then say, maybe you'll talk to your guidance and counseling teacher, but the guidance and counseling teacher is not there anymore. So it's really all coming back into the home, into the parents. Charity, sex and sexuality should begin in the home. Yes.
When you're looking at our African setting, when I would say maybe when we were growing up, not even, or even those are older than us, there was that channel within the African setting of saying boys go to Nana Sekuru, girls go to Nana Tete, and that's where those issues are done. Yes. Oftentimes, I think that's where the problem emanated from where we're saying, no, I can't sit down and discuss with my mother this. I can't sit down with my father and discuss this. But when I'm talking to my aunt, when I'm talking to my uncle, it's better. But now we find that whole extended family has been wiped out. And for us as parents to continue holding on to such scenarios where I'm saying, no, I can't talk to my child, would that then be a good service to our kids if we continue with that mentality? Because with a lot of parents, if you speak to them, they're still arguing that way.
They are, but sadly, I guess I'm in a position whereby I've talked to parents and I've also been talking to these adolescents and youth. And you'll be surprised that they want their parents to talk to them. It's like a huge ask, but they always then say, you know what, I really wish my parents would talk to me. And then, unfortunately, some parents still believe children should be seen and not heard, which is very unfair.
And how can parents break the ice in opening these discussions?
Okay, so this show is an icebreaker. This is our first segment. So if you're watching, call your child for the second segment. We can start here because then you're going to say to them, what do you even think about this? We're complicating matters as parents and as adults. So sometimes this discussion is, I know in at the other show we're talking about how a brochure that you can bring home to your child about something that you've seen can lead to a discussion. It's about an advert on the TV that you can then say, you know what, these people are talking about condoms. So don't complicate it. Try to bring it home to the everyday things, to a show you're watching on TV. And then you say, you know what, I'm very anxious about this discussion. Do you think you can talk to me about it? So this is where we are starting. Yes.
And when we are talking about that being parent to child communication, should it be every issue that can be discussed, or there should be boundaries? Because this is my mother that I'm talking to. This is my father that I'm talking to. Can I go to my mother and say, I think I need to start having sex with my boyfriend, or I need to, are there boundaries in terms of what you can freely discuss to your parent? Where maybe my mother would tell me that if you do this, you would get pregnant. If you do this, you can actually get an STI. Openly talking to me as their child.
So there shouldn't be any boundaries. It's the boundaries that are causing us problems at the end of the day. Because then when you ask a young girl who comes to the clinic, for instance, to say, you got pregnant, haven't you ever heard about condoms? They'll say, my mom only says, usatambe neva komana. So she ended there. What did she mean? What was she saying? Was she saying don't be with them on the road? Was she saying don't play a game with them? Was she saying do not remove your clothes and have sex? She just then ended where this child was left with so many answers, and she experimented. So be very careful when you think you're keeping something away from them, because then they'll go and find out. But if this mother had a discussion whereby she really then went into it, but also people need to know this is age appropriate. So I'm not saying go to your 3-year-old and start talking about sex, or to your 10-year-old, or yes, 10-year-olds are now adolescents. Package it as they grow.
Yes.
At this age, maybe you're talking about body parts. At this other age, you're bringing in sex in itself. At this age, you're talking about family planning. So that should work.
I'm liking the fact that you're actually mentioning the issue of age appropriateness. And I think as a country, we have adopted the comprehensive sexuality education within the new curriculum. So already those issues are actually being discussed at school for our children. But we are then saying it mustn't end at school. When they come home, even sometimes they might bring it as homework. So that becomes like an icebreaker for you as a parent. We will continue with this discussion after this short break. Welcome back. We continue with our discussion, where today on the program we are talking about the issue of parent-to-child communication. Really, for parents to be sitting down with their children to talk about the issues of sexual and reproductive health rights, talk about anything like what Rumbi said. There shouldn't be boundaries. Rumbi, I want to come back to you and try and find out, when you're looking at parent-to-child communication, how effective is it as a method of promoting behavior change amongst adolescents when we compare it with other strategies?
Okay, so parent-to-child communication is actually a very good strategy, and there's actually research that has shown that parents who have talked to their children, those children have had better outcomes in terms of the reduced number of teenage pregnancies, because when you've talked about a condom at home, and maybe even when your father has shown you a condom or your mother has shown you a condom, so you know how to use it. And even if they tell you, this is like maybe to your 16, 17-year-olds, unfortunately children are having sex even as early as 13, Tari.
I know.
Yes, not only I know, these are people that we see in our clinic every day. So the pregnancies that we are seeing right now in the clinic are 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds. So these are the people that are having sex. So yes, it might seem like, what is she saying? How can she be talking about a condom to a 13-year-old?
Yes.
So at 12, when you start telling your daughter about how she's going to grow breasts, how she's going to get her period, then tell her that once she gets her period, if she has sex, she'll get pregnant. If she gets pregnant, then she's stuck with this child. And then so you want to bring in issues of protected sex. you're talking about condoms. So a child whose mother has talked about a condom, a child whose mother or father has even shown them a condom, will know about a condom.
I want to be a devil's advocate, and I know this is what a lot of parents who are actually watching might actually be feeling, where we are then saying, why not teach them to abstain? Why not have conversations where we are saying it's better to wait than for me to encourage my 13-year-old, and I'm showing them methods of prevention when they are being intimate with somebody. I'm talking about to a 13-year-old. You know, with a lot of parents, it becomes like I'm actually promoting it. Maybe advise us as parents to then say, no, this is not what will be happening, because I'm sure that's what and that's what a lot of us do. We are talking about, don't do this before this time. I know with my daughter, I was like, no boyfriend before you turn 16, no boyfriend before you what? You need to have your results first. That's the conversation that happens. But then when you look at what happens on the ground, it's completely different. The kids are indulging, and then they get pregnant. Some will try and abort. Some will lose their lives. Maternal mortality happens. You know, all those things. So just unpack that for us.
So you know what? I was actually on a WhatsApp group where my daughter who's 10 is, and then there's in the inbox this 10-year-old boy who's also in grade 6 sends a message to introduce himself to my 10-year-old daughter, and it sounded so innocent, but these are 10-year-olds, and you'd be surprised. So this group at the end of the day sometimes ends up with 700, 1,000 messages. These are grade 6s, and in our minds and at the back of our minds we're thinking, no, but this is my 10-year-old. This is not the day and age anymore. Parents need to just get with the program. I'm sorry to say, and it might sound harsh. But so as early as 10, adolescence is kicking in. Some of our 10-year-olds are growing breasts. They are aware of their sexuality. Yes. There is a boy that is going to tell your 10-year-old daughter they like them. And then you are at home in your comfort zone and you're thinking, but no. Which takes me back to the issue of comprehensive sexuality education. In grade 6, they have now been told about HIV and protected sex and unprotected sex. So when you've done that homework with your child, then bring in the issues about sex. We are not saying to talk about sex means that children should have sex. And each time we talk about sex, we've always talked about abstinence, Tari. It remains something that every parent yearns. We all want our children to really then walk down the aisle at some point and then, give themselves to their prince. But it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
How do we know that, because I've talked to them about it, it's almost like a passport? How do we know that now that I've opened the discussion? Here I'm communicating fears that parents have through just interacting with them, where if I've spoken to my child to say, this is what you're supposed to do once you decide to. So it's almost like a permission for me, because my mother actually anticipates I can be naughty and I can do this.
Okay, so in the back of your mind, you're saying, so children, like anyone else, just want someone who's going to love them and trust them. So sometimes when you're a child whose parents have talked to you about condoms or talked to you about sex, you know about these things. So the experiment sometimes you don't even really want to experiment about it. It's something you know. We've talked about it at home. So you'll find when these children have discussions, some of them with parents who have talked to them about it will say my mother talked to me about a condom. She showed me a condom. So really, and she said this, I can always have sex whenever, but I don't want to have this sex. My mother trusts me. So you also want to tell your children, I trust you very much. I trust you to know I've told you what I think is right and what is wrong. So that you empower your children by talking to them, and they also don't want to disappoint you, so they might not experiment as often as you think they will actually. Yeah.
Do we have case studies though?
Yes, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, we see, like I'm saying to you, these everyday stories are not just stories. These are parents who then come into the clinic with their children. And some of them always pose this question to say, what could I have said to my child? But then it's too late. The child is already pregnant. And then we're now trying to say to them, or some will come, because some of these 15-year-olds will always then ask the mother to leave the room. So we have this discussion with the child. And you'll be surprised that sometimes a 15-year-old will say, unfortunately, I don't know whether it's unfortunate or fortunate that they enjoyed having sex and they are 15. And that said, the next question about whether they'll do it again, they will actually told me, not just one or two, but a lot of them have told me they'll do it again. And then I'm now faced with having to call in the parent after this one-on-one to tell them, you know what, we might need to start talking about family planning, which is a very uncomfortable discussion with the mother of a 15-year-old.
I know.
But these are this is what is on the ground.
Because, I'm not sure whether it's a misconception or what, where people talk about once you start going on family planning early, it might affect you later on. And I'm just thinking, my daughter starting family planning at 15.
Your daughter starting family planning at 15, or you being a grandmother at 15.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's a very difficult choice. But you know, at the end of the day, some of these mothers didn't realize that. So there are very different methods of family planning. And with these methods of family planning, we're saying adolescents should have access, not necessarily to say access to go and have the family planning method, but to talk about it. So when they come to service providers, we also then tell them the dangers of having sex early. So programming around family planning around sex isn't always to say go and have sex. It's to say let's talk about it more. Let me give you information to say, do you really want to be having sex at 13? Do you realize that? So for some children, the moment you have that discussion and then they think, is it really worth it?
Yeah, I know this is quite difficult for a lot of people to really grasp, because when we are looking at even what the Constitution says, is it the marriage bill or the Constitution, where it talks about age of consent, which is 16, hey?
Age of sexual consent, 16 years.
Yes, and then for me to even as a parent, will I not be even arrested where I'm talking to my child and saying, okay, already like the one that you're talking about, to say they had sex at 15 and they're coming and they're saying, yeah, I enjoyed it, you know, and I'm saying this is something illegal. For me, the next step would have been, okay, who did you do it with? And then have that person arrested.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll have that discussion after the break. I do know I'm putting you on the spot, but I want us to clarify these issues, because when we're engaging parents who are not into programming, these are the questions that they have, and it's always important that we do address them. Join us after the break. Welcome back. We continue with our discussion with Rumbi, where we're talking about the issue of parent-to-child communication. So Rumbi, I was saying to you, you know, when we're talking about someone who's below the age of consent, and we're talking about, yes, they were indulging, and we are not making the perpetrator to be arrested.
So there's the law which you've brought in and which we need to be very aware of. So as a parent yourself, if your 15-year-old daughter indulges in sex, half the time you probably won't even know. But the fact that we've talked about communication, maybe she will come and tell you about it, which I hope she does. So your job now is to reinforce how sex at 15 is not really good. She should wait. You want to go back and talk even about secondary abstinence. So tell her, okay, she has had sex, but she should still stop. But you come across, like recently I came across a 15-year-old who had sex, and she was actually now staying with the perpetrator, so to speak, because obviously there was no need for consent here. But she left me in a huge dilemma, because she then said to me, if at all we called in the police or the Department of Social Services, she was going to commit suicide because she was in love with this man. And also sometimes it goes back to the issue of parents and guardians being absent and not having supported the children enough. But at 15, she really believed. She actually said to me, and this I remember, because I remember even sharing it in confidentiality with my colleague. She says, he's in my DNA. I love him.
That's a 15-year-old.
Yes, this is a 15-year-old. Wow. So she says even today, because I've been taken away from my home where she was staying with him, she says she wasn't feeling well. She can only ever feel well when she's with this young man. So 15-year-olds think like that, feel like that, and they believe it's okay. But the law of this country definitely does not allow any child under 16 to have sex. But what are we saying about the 17-year-old? Would you want your 17-year-old to be having sex?
Yeah.
But because you've talked about it and you've told your children, outside of what I might want as a parent to say to you, do not have sex. So bring in even issues about the law. Tell them it's not even allowed to be having sex before 16. Tell them even if they decide to be in a relationship before 18, they're a child.
Yeah.
You cannot even give, if at all you wanted to be a cool parent, you cannot also go against the law. So talk about these things with our children. Yes.
Yeah. And I want to find out when we are looking at those issues, when we're looking at PCC, the parent-to-child communication as a method, here we're looking at the available resources now or support that can actually assist our parents or guardians for them to be able to better communicate with their children. Because remember, like I was saying to you, when it's your child, it's very difficult. If you give me your daughter, I'll sit down with her and talk about everything with her, prepare. But when it comes to my daughter now, it becomes a major challenge. So are there methods, available resources? And I'm even thinking that should we do peer-to-peer mothering, where I take your daughter, you take mine? Because really, I know we're talking about parent-to-child communication, but should it be me as the parent, or I can parent the other person's child and they in turn parent mine? How best can we do it? Because it's not easy, Rumbi. Saying it is easy. I know when we're in programming, it's easy to say it. When it hits home,
it's tough.
It's tough.
No, yes. So you brought up peer-to-peer, which you could then use as your icebreaker. So your child goes to your friend's place. That's the icebreaker. But you, Tari, will need to talk to your own, because your friend has their own values and morals and beliefs. No matter how good your friendship is, I'm sure there's someone you want to tell your own daughter. So we talked about icebreakers before, and like we're saying, this is a very difficult conversation to have under whatever circumstances. So maybe that can be your starting point. The icebreakers, watching this TV show, bringing a brochure, saying, you know what, there's this message. I noticed before lockdown, there were also a lot of posts about the psychologists or sexual programmers who were meeting or inviting adolescents to come to some talks. So, you know, there was that. There's some churches who will have this. They're the peer educator program like we have with the RSC, whereby we've got these peer educators in the community, so they can be that link between parents and children. There's someone who needs to kickstart this discussion. Yes.
I'm sure as parents, we are hearing it from Rumbi. I know as much as it is difficult, the point that she's stressing is the fact that it's important that my own child knows my values. I need to impart those values. I need to impart even those conversations, those difficult conversations. She's saying, let's have them with our children. And for fathers, sitting down with your boys and talking about that. And can we promote fathers talking to the girls' mothers today? Because now I had actually segregated to say, boys, go to your fathers and girls, go to your mothers. Can girls openly talk about these issues, and can fathers openly talk with their daughters when they're talking about parent-to-child communication?
Yes, definitely. I was actually going to come in and say, no, Tari, we're missing the plot here. So fathers, at one point, not fathers, they were boyfriends themselves. Yes. So you see, they've got certain tips, they know certain things. So this conversation when a father is having it could then tell his daughters, you know what, when I was a young man. So you can talk to either sex of your children, and it's very good because you have something to share that's very unique. You would on the other end would be telling your daughter, you said to this boy you liked him and then you didn't really like him, but now you're telling your daughter to say a no is a no. But then you say, so you tell her, when we were growing up this happened, the father. So parents, if both of them are there, should each bring in, and at some point both of you can sit your child down and tell them. So it could be the mother talking to a boy, the father. Do not prescribe to say the father will do. I know there's a lot of that. But what will I say to my son? Tell him even about reproductive health issues. Simply start with, you know what, you can like a girl at one point. And when you do like her, please be responsible. A mother can say that. Mothers should talk to their boys. Fathers should talk to their daughters, actually.
Yeah. And when we are, understanding parents are doing that. Yes, you have given us, laid down all those to say this is what we should do. When we are then looking at raising these children, you know, in our African culture, we say, your child is my child. My child is. And I know you have spoken about it, but still you emphasize that I should talk to my child. Here I'm trying to look at the issue of the other support system, where I'm even looking at my pastor, the church, you know, coming in and complimenting. Is that acceptable when we're looking at parent-to-child communication as support systems?
Yes, we definitely appreciate and acknowledge the use of support systems, because for most parents that could then be, it's so in as much as we're talking about this and we're making it seem very easy, it's not. So even after watching this show, not many parents are going to be able to talk to their children. Like you're saying, it's very easy to talk to a child that is not your own. Even for me, being at work, for me this is work. So I'll talk to the adolescents, but probably when I get home, it's difficult to talk to my daughter. So support, but please, this word support, let's use them as support and then systems. We are the main anchor. Support systems are most welcome. They're actually even encouraged. Yes, she is saying support systems are encouraged. But as parents, when we're talking about parent-child communication, from what Rumbi said, we are the anchors. Rumbi, your call to action to us as parents. Please, please, please take time to talk to your children. And for the children, I know from the ones that I've talked to, you have asked for parents to talk to you. So when your parents do talk to you, because this is two-way, yes, parent to child means the children also need to open up to talk to their parents, and the parents need to open up to talk to their children. So it will start with that single step, but let's try it.
Trying it, yes. She is encouraging us that we need to try that angle. And if it fails,
So you see, your child is your own. So whatever mistake they then make at the end of the day, it's going to come back to you. So if you remember that, to say, so if this child then gets pregnant, I'm the grandmother. So if they have an STI, that should keep you thinking, if I try to talk today and I feel shut out, let me try again after a day or two. Try and try again. Yes, we need this to work. Yes.
yeah, definitely when it comes to issues of parent-to-child communication, Rumbi is saying we need to make sure that it works. And often where we become comfortable as a mother, I'm saying I'm talking to my daughter and then I'm expecting the father to talk to the boy. Rumbi is saying when we're talking about parents, it includes mother and father. Let's sit down with our children and talk to them, prepare them, because once the consequences happen to them, when they're HIV positive, when they get STIs, when they become pregnant early, dropping out of school, the consequences come back to us as parents. So it's always important that that dialogue between ourselves and our children is there. I'm hoping that this show becomes an icebreaker, and hoping that after this broadcast, you are going to be sitting down and talking to your children about all those important issues that we tackled on this program. Until next week, it's goodbye.